Shannon Heritage, needs, I think, certainty, and it needs, it seems to me, to move out of the Shannon Group.
Well, that's a point which we may get onto, but in terms of it staying within the Shannon Group for now, Mary Considine said that both it and the airport need money and effectively need action soon, reading in between the lines of what she said.
Yeah, no, that's very clear. I mean, I've spoken to him and Ryan several times at this stage, at least 3 times, about Shannon Group and Shannon Heritage in particular. And, there was I spoke to the Taoiseach about it both before his election as Taoiseach and in the Dáil since his election as Taoiseach. And, there was I had an expectation that the July stimulus package would provide something of greater benefit for Shannon Heritage than has happened.
He did indicate as much, I think actually in remarks to yourself, and that was widely reported on by ourselves and by others.
The July stimulus programme that we'll be announcing this week, which hopefully may be of some assistance to the heritage issue that you raised, and the perhaps giving additional capacity and support to enable people to deal with the crisis that COVID-19 has brought about. And those are issues I'd like to discuss with the Deputy in greater detail in terms of a fundamental point in terms of moving Shannon Heritage to a better home. Obviously that would take some detailed examination, but I do note that you are very, very concerned about its current operations in terms of the low level of activity, the impact on employment, and I would hope perhaps there might be opportunities arising out of the stimulus package that may be of interest and of use to Shannon Heritage. I will speak to the Minister for Tourism in terms of the issues that you've raised.
What would you like to see happen, though? I mean, yesterday Mary Considine talked about revenues falling nearly 50 million euros is what they're forecasting across the year. I mean, the state isn't going to put their hands that deep into their pockets, is it?
No, it's not. But I mean, I think, first of all, there's a plan for a capital investment project in Bunratty Castle and Folk Park. There has to be matched funding from Shannon Group and from Fáilte Ireland, but because of the pandemic, state aid rules have been relaxed. It is quite clear that European governments have been availing of the opportunity to invest in projects that can give a return over time. I think this is that type of project, and I think the state needs to provide the capital expenditure planned for Bunratty Castle and Folk Park. And in the longer term, then I think look for perhaps a better home for it, or not a better home, sorry, I mean, I don't mean to be pejorative towards Shannon Group, but maybe a more suitable home. People are banding about the idea of the OPW and county councils. I think Clare County Council has uniquely, perhaps among local authorities, has a large degree of experience in managing tourist projects. Look, you have to remember that the reason that it was set up as an independent entity was because passenger numbers were falling precipitously in the years before that, while Shannon was part of the Dublin Airport Group. And I don't think where Shannon Airport is located is the issue. The issue is the state's aviation policy, and it's been pursued now by successive governments, where it's all roads. It's a facet of a broader problem, I think, in Ireland, and it's all roads lead to Dublin. We don't have a balanced aviation policy. We have no sort of. We have this idea that we'd have balanced regional development, and we'll attract foreign direct investment into all parts of Ireland.
But how do you address that in a free market? You can't tell Aer Lingus or Ryanair or whoever that they have to fly into Shannon.
You can't in point-to-point under open skies, but you can with regard to, for example, transit flights that are coming from one continent and going on to North America. They're not subject to open skies in any country in the world, including Ireland. And they could easily be said. We could easily be said to them, look. Ireland as a state has a very large airport with extensive runways, a big long runway, which would suit your type of flights, and you have to go to Shannon.
And that would be very welcome for the airport, but what people listening to this programme in the main want to see is a Shannon airport that's welcoming passengers that are then coming into County Clare and Midwest and spending money here. Transit passengers aren't as good.
No, they're not. But first of all, those type of transit passengers, those flights do take on passengers and do let off passengers, albeit not very many. But what those type of flights going into Shannon would do is create economies of scale that would enable Shannon to lower landing charges, would help Shannon to pay its bills, for example. So I think it is important and not to be discounted. The other thing is, of course, that we do need to look at how to attract routes into Shannon. I mean, a huge amount of money is spent attracting foreign direct investment into various parts of Ireland. We've repeatedly been told that an airport is one of the main aspects It makes the Midwest attractive. Yet no money is being put in by the state into sustaining and developing routes out of Shannon. So that's something else that needs to be looked at. And neither of those things are being done at the moment. I think it's quite important that they are done. But I suppose we do need an overall look. I mean, how much more do we want to concentrate activity into Dublin Airport? I mean, it was quite clear from yesterday's presentation that the Dublin Airport are going to proceed with the new runway, and the next project that they'll have after that will be a new terminal while Shannon is mothballed. I mean, Dublin is quite happy as a commercial semi-state. It's quite happy to eat up all of the aviation for the entire island.
It's been quite successful before now, obviously.
But I think it's important also to bear in mind that there's a lot of talk about a DART interconnector to Dublin. There's all these buses that go from Dublin Airport to practically every part of the country, and nobody's talking about any similar supports for Shannon. Okay. So I mean, you say that the state can't direct. I mean, there's a whole lot of hidden supports provided to Dublin Airport by the state, and has been provided to Dublin Airport by the state for a number of years now, and nobody's looking at that. While at the same time we're starting to throw our hands in the air and say, oh, the state is powerless to act. I mean, the state is acting. The state is providing hidden supports to Dublin Airport, and it's to the detriment of Shannon Airport.
Will we see action, Michael McNamara?
I don't know, but I mean, I think we have to, because, the status quo isn't, unless something happens, we'll all be brought together for a funeral, because of Shannon Airport, because it is, unfortunately, every airport in Ireland is in a very bad place. But I mean, I think it's fair to say that, notwithstanding the best efforts of Mary Considine, that Shannon is in a far worse place than any of the others.
The pandemic has been devastating for our business. We have virtually little or no traffic coming through the airport until the end of June. We saw a slight pickup in July, but we're still 8% below the levels that we would normally be operating at from a passenger perspective.
We heard from the DA that they had cash reserves, and I mean, flights are opening up and numbers are increasing through Dublin. So I mean, there will have to be action, because we simply can't continue on the way we are. I mean, Aer Lingus' commitment was watery enough, unfortunately. I mean, various deputies asked, well, when are you going to return flights to Heathrow? And we could get an answer. It was, well, whenever there's a demand. Oh, well, yeah, I thought the reaction was not terribly, it didn't demonstrate a huge commitment to the airport.
We are trying to kind of keep as much of the shape of our network as possible in the medium term. And sometimes that involves actually having schedules that are published for later in the year open. And that's a way of us actually gauging whether there's enough demand for those to fly. And then we have to take action. So it is an important sort of indicator as to whether there are enough people to fly the route to make it viable. But I think the reality of the situation is it's very fluid, it's very dynamic, and at the minute we're not seeing the demand come back to confirm when the Shannon Heathrow service would be reinstated.
The other thing I took from yesterday's presentations was that we are, rightly or wrongly, we're completely out of sync with the approach of the rest of Europe on travel and tourism.